Hope you guys are doing well. So, this week's Torah portion is a very interesting example of how what goes on in the Torah applies to our everyday life. Basically, to run through this week, we have a few steps. The Jews, the Israelites, they leave their bond, I guess you would call it. They were slaves in Egypt, but they didn't just go straight from being slaves to being free, from being under the burden of mankind to being subservient to God. It took stages. And I feel like that's something we need to learn for our own lives, is that when we're looking for help from God, the only hint we can get to know how things work is from our religion as a Jew, to look into the Torah. Other religions, I guess you would look where you would get it from. But the concept is that when we ask God for something, it usually comes in stages. So, like for example, to take this week's Torah portion, they were slaves in Egypt, then they left Egypt, then they went through a bunch of trials and challenges. They were concerned, they're out in the desert, they don't see any food, they don't see anything to drink. Why were we freed? We'd be better off back there in Egypt. At least we were alive. At least we didn't have to be concerned about starving to death, about being, dying of thirst. An additional thing is that when they went through the splitting of the sea, they had the opportunity to observe it from many different angles. You're talking about 600,000 Jews, besides for the ones that were elder, younger. I think the females were not included in the count. I think it was somewhere in the ballpark, if I remember correctly, of 1.1 million people, all having different perspectives. Persons looking at the splitting of the sea, and they're thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're walking through water on dry land with the water standing up on each side. Some rabbis understand it to mean that each tribe walked through separate pillars of water. It was an incredible thing to see. And then the Egyptians were coming, chasing after them, and the water just falls down on them. And this wasn't something that happened in an instant, like you learn as a child, but it actually happened over many hours. The whole experience was fascinating. And then God had to do something for them. He had to show them the dead Egyptians on the side of the water so they should know that it was over. Why? Well, you could say simply because to give them a boost of confidence, or you could say the other extreme, that they were concerned, hey, if these miracles are being done for us, maybe they were being done for them. So there were a lot of things that you can look at from different perspectives. Why were they complaining about thirst and hunger? Or, hey, maybe you would have complained about a lot more. But as they're going through this stage where we're going to go forward and we're going to learn about how they lived in the desert for 40 years before they went to Israel, what they experienced. We already have their first war that they had in this week's portion. But you got to think back into your own life. When a person prays to God, they expect instant gratification, and also they expect a yes. God doesn't promise that he's always going to say yes. It's not about getting what you want. It's about getting the right thing. And when you get a no, it's a fact, not maybe, but it's a fact that you were just asking for the wrong thing. But even when he gives you the right thing, look at Joseph. It took him over 2 decades of being all types of prisoner. He was a prisoner and slave in someone's home. Then he was in the prison system and all this. Then he ends up being the most powerful leader the Jews ever had. Moses led the Jews for 40 years, never had a day's peace, and he's considered the greatest person that ever lived. Joseph led us for 80 years, and nobody ever rebelled. Of course, it's nice to have the power of Egypt and the Pharaoh behind you, but that's the reality. So imagine what he went through. Imagine during his 20 some odd years, 21 years, what he could have been thinking, but he didn't. He had faith. And we need to have faith. And I'm hoping that's the impression that I'm giving across. I hope you guys are enjoying. And I thought I would try this for a bit, see how it goes. I've been making long videos. I think that my short videos, I hope you guys are enjoying, are entertaining and interesting and fun. And maybe you guys will see me on here just chatting away for a bit on my long videos. We'll see how it goes. Have a great one. Looking forward to next week. It's an exciting thing, the Torah. God bless. Love to hear your comments.